I'm Mitch from Beyond the Woods, and today I'm going to compare the Darkglass B7K Ultra with the 2 Notes La Bass. Let's get into it. If you're a modern metal bass player, chances are you're already familiar with Darkglass. Their B7K and B3K pedals are all over the boards of many notable players, and they've sort of become the new Sans amp in the world of bass DIs. Now take 2 Notes. They've done something very similar to Darkglass actually, but in the world of load boxes. With their Torpedo series, you can run your big, loud, bolsterous tube amps into digital cabinet impulses for direct silent recording or consistent front of house feeds for live shows. So both companies have done a very good job of applying older concepts to newer technologies to provide for modern players. However, 2 Notes has started to branch out, and they're starting to cross streams with Darkglass by introducing the La Bass. So today I'm going to compare the flagship bass preamps from both companies to see if there is a clear distinction between the two. Since the La Bass is the relative newcomer and the cheaper product, I decided it would be a good idea to try and emulate some Darkglass tones using the La Bass to show you if there's a clear discrepancy in sound quality between the two of them. I have 4 different tones today: a clean, a fat overdrive, a 50-50 wet-dry distorted blend, and a full-on balls-to-the-wall distortion. Both pedals are running directly into my interface without any sort of post-processing, and both pedals are receiving the exact same performance of a reamped DI track. In order to get the La Bass sounding as close to the Darkglass as I possibly could, I had to engage the built-in cabinet impulse, but only for the last 2 most distorted sound examples. I'll talk more about that later, but without further ado, here are the sounds. To my ears, the Darkglass doesn't sound any better than the La Bass does, so on that facet alone, I think the 2 Notes is the best choice because it is $80 cheaper. It's also jam-packed with a bunch of features that the B7K Ultra does not have, like an effects loop, a through jack, a headphone output, that cabinet sim, MIDI in and out, and it's still coming in $80 cheaper than the B7K Ultra does. However, I do have my gripes with the La Bass, and I'm actually frustrated with the La Bass for the exact same reason that I'm frustrated with the B7K Ultra. I went in depth about this in my dedicated B7K Ultra review, and you can check that out if you're interested in sound examples. But to sum it up, the two channels of the B7K Ultra sound very different from each other. However, they share the same EQ, and that's the reason I can't bring that pedal with me to a live situation, is because I can't use both channels and make them sound the way that I want them to. So I was really stoked on the idea of the La Bass because there are separate EQs for each channel, and I thought, hooray, all of my problems have been solved. But they have not, because even though there are separate EQs for each channel and they work great, it's the cabinet impulse on the back end that's really getting to me. To my ears, with my bass and with my preferences in tone, I think the clean channel, channel A of the La Bass, sounds awesome without any sort of cabinet involved, whether it's the built-in cabinet impulse or my real-life cab, which is an Eden D410 XLT. I think any sort of cabinet on that clean tone just makes it too dark and muffles up, you know, all the brilliant clarity of it. Here's an example. However, I definitely think that the distorted channel of this pedal needs a cabinet of some sort, whether it's the built-in impulse, which sounds great with the distortion by the way, or a real-life cabinet of some sort. I definitely think it needs it, especially when you turn up the gain. It gets way, way too harsh without any sort of cap sim. That's my main difficulty with the La Bass. I can't stand having a clean tone that's way too dark, but I also can't stand having a distorted tone that is way, way too brittle. So that's something I can definitely give the Darkglass props for, because you can turn up the gain and it still gets super aggressive, but you don't necessarily need a cabinet impulse to get rid of the harshness. With the La Bass, I think you definitely do. Of course, if you're recording and you don't need to do any sort of live switching, none of this matters. You can just dial in the tone that you want, turn on cab sims or plug into a real cab, all you want. But for live use, I can't use either of these pedals because I don't want to compromise one of my channels to make the other one sound good. At the end of the day, I think both pedals sound really phenomenal, but I give the edge to the La Bass. Even though it's $80 cheaper than the Darkglass, it has so many more features and it is capable of just as many amazing tones. The only real downsides is that it's much bigger than the B7K Ultra and it requires 12-volt power instead of 9-volt power. However, I will not be taking either of these pedals live anytime soon. They're two-channel pedals and the channels between them are just not cohesive. And I can't compromise one tone to let the other shine through well. I just want a pedal that can bring both channels at full quality and be able to bring that live. In the studio, this really is no big deal, where you can dial it in, turn off cab sims, turn on cab sims as you need it. But in a live situation, these pedals just aren't cutting it for me. That about does it for this. Thank you for watching. Make sure to leave me a like or a comment down below, and I'll see you next time.